old. Today, that tradition continues. Please join me in welcoming Governor Scott Walker, the 45th governor of the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you. I've got a proclamation here, and I'm going to share a couple comments. But as I mentioned this morning, I was in Milwaukee in a similar celebration with young people from across the Milwaukee area, part of the YMCA's annual tradition, and declared it there as well, that today all across the great state of Wisconsin, being the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in this state, not only in state buildings, not only with our cabinet who is here, our lieutenant governor is here, my staff is here, but with all the people from every part of the state of Wisconsin. I was last night back at my home in Wauwatosa talking with my mother, and she loves giving me pictures. She takes pictures all the time, and one of the pictures I pulled out, obviously with the crowd here it's hard to see, but it's her and one of her best friends from a week ago. A week ago I was here with the Chief Justice across the way taking the oath of office, and later that day my mother had taken pictures of some of her friends and others that were with her, and one of them was a woman, it's in this picture, by the name of Jewel Sims. Jewel and my mother met about 55 years ago. They were both participants in Girls State. They both happened to live south of the border in Illinois. My mother was a farm girl from just outside of Belvidere, Illinois. Jewel was an African-American schoolgirl from Chicago. And like many kids at that time who got together in programs, whether it was Girls State or Boys State or other programs like that, Jewel and my mother became friends along the way, and later as they went back to school that fall, my mother invited Jewel to come and visit with her in Belvidere at their farm just outside of town. Now, my mother's an only child, lived on a farm, barely got into town, didn't know a whole lot about what was going on at the time, and was shocked that particular day as my grandparents, my mother, and Jewel went in to have dinner, and she found out for the first time in her life that they wouldn't serve her because Jewel was with. My mother went home and cried that day, and probably like maybe some others in her time could have said, well, that was enough, and would have just let that be and would have moved on. But instead, over the years, she and Jewel continued to be friends. She'd go to Chicago, Jewel would come to Belvidere. Later, when they were married, each went to each other's funeral, or each went to each other's wedding ceremony. When their kids were born, they were together for those events. When I was married nearly 20 years ago, Jewel was there. And last week, when I took the oath of office, Jewel Sims was sitting right about up there. The reason I tell you that is some of you know my father's a minister, and certainly over the years, my father's been an inspiration with the words he said from the pulpit about all sorts of things, but particularly about Dr. King. You see, my father was a Baptist minister, and many years I got to meet the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. up at Green Lake as part of other ministers who were part of the American Baptist Assembly and the National Baptist Assembly and others at the time. So my father certainly was an inspiration. But I think in many ways for my younger brother and I, the relationship that my mother and Jewel Sims had over the years was a much greater testimony than anything my father could have said from the pulpit. See, when I saw those young people up here earlier, the message I like to share with folks on a day like today, and we're going to hear in a moment from the I Have a Dream speech, and certainly those speeches are great inspirations. But sometimes I think our young people feel overwhelmed. Sometimes they think, they look at that and they say, well, I can't give a speech like that on a mall like that. I couldn't be like Dr. King. They realize where the words are certainly inspirational, more important than that were the actions, were the deeds. Not only the deeds of Dr. King himself, but the millions of people he inspired here in Wisconsin, across this country, and around the globe. As we look ahead to the future, to all the challenges that were put before us here today and at the other ceremonies like this all across the state, one of the best things we can do is make sure that we don't just adhere to the words, but to the actions of Dr. King and all those who followed to try and seek to follow in his way ever since. Ricardo said it well before. I said this morning. I love quoting from the I Have a Dream speech and from talking about to the mountaintop, but one of my favorites It's when Dr. King said that, darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can do that. And hatred cannot drive out hatred, only love can do that. In the past week and a half, we know that more than ever. Not only on this day, but on every day, the best thing we can do is examine how we treat others, not just in politics, not just in education or business, but in each and every aspect of our life. And when we do that, we will truly carry on that dream.